Hamlets, a borough just to the east of the City of London. Known for covering most of the traditional East End, it was unfortunately one of the main targets of the German bombing raids during the Second World War. Massive amounts of damage was inflicted and nearly 20,000 deaths were recorded during the Blitz. The worst hits were unfortunately on the poorer districts, with the bombings changing the landscape of the area drastically, that there was little to nothing left after the war. Most of the events in the Second World War took place here in Bethnal Green, where our main focus in this video will be. Starting off at the Bethnal Green tube station, where a total of 173 people lost their lives during an air raid in 1943. The Bethnal Green underground station was one of the few tube stations at the time and was located in a densely populated area. The station was used as a huge bomb shelter and held up to 7,000 people at times. Thomas Penn was the first person on the scene of the disaster, and his very first instinct was to assess the extent of the trouble. To do this, he crawled over a mass amount of bodies to the foot of this very staircase, where a woman had tripped with the pressure of the crowd. This entrance jammed over 200 people, equivalent to fitting everyone in a small room. Today, the disaster is commemorated with a plaque that can be found at the station's southeast entrance, on the corner of the Cambridge Heath Road and the Roman Road, above the step where the first woman fell. It reads in memory of 173 men, women and children who lost their lives on the evening of Wednesday the 3rd of March 1943, descending these steps to Bethnal Green underground air raid shelter. Hundreds and thousands of bombs were dropped on Britain in the war. More than 70 years later, unexploded bombs are still being found today. Unexploded bombs pose a big problem today when found in an area, forcing people to evacuate, with road closures causing inconvenience to many. Just over a year ago, a German World War II bomb was found in the basement of a building site on Temple Street. Now, even though the bomb had been buried this whole time, it still poses a threat, and it could be as dangerous today than it was 70 years ago. In order to remove it, the army bomb disposal experts arrived to the scene. The police cordoned off the area and homes and businesses were evacuated, causing huge commotion among citizens. So how many of these devices are left out there now? Well, according to the historian Matt Brosnan, it is impossible to know, as the German bombers dropped 24,000 tons of explosives on Britain in the Second World War. Mr. Brosnan stated that all bombs have not exploded because of defects or other reasons, and they could have been buried tens of feet below the surface. Therefore, in short, we simply do not know where they are. The St. John Church in Bethnal Green was badly damaged by the bomb that destroyed the vicarage as well as the structure of the church. Services were held in the crypt, and it served as a shelter as well. Today we're going to have a look at actually what happened by asking the vicar a few questions as well. This was a very popular place during World War II, as it served as a bomb shelter. Based on your experience or stories, could you give us an insight to what the experience was like to someone who was a member of the church during the Second World War?
The stories that people tell are generally positive ones. What they remember, or at least what they want to remember that they remember, are the good things. So they talk about getting on with one another, about the opportunities to live in a way that they hadn't before the war, and even of being either in our crypt in the shelter there or down on the station in the shelter there. The social feeling that gave them, of singing together and things. But behind that, there is pain and sadness as well, of the uncertainty of life, of not knowing whether they were going to be there the next day, and of the losses that they were experiencing within their families in their community.
Unexploded bombs in London have been discovered recently. There was one here in Bethnal Green not too long ago, and it forced an evacuation within the area. With an uncertain amount of unexploded bombs buried underground, possibly still within the area, how do you think this affects the lives of us today?
Actually, I don't think people think about it very much. There isn't a fear in the local community. They only seem to be discovered when there's new building work. I think it causes real disruption when they're found, because it's very easy, because of the nature of the road network here. If any one of the major roads is closed, then the whole area becomes a standstill. I guess the other area of concern is that because of the diversity here, it's not always easy for the police to persuade people to leave their houses. But otherwise, I think there is not a concern that we might be blown up by unexploded bombs.
Thank you so much for your time, sir.
It's been a pleasure.
Victoria Park was largely closed to the public during the war, and it became a large anti-aircraft site. The guns that used to be there straddled the path of the German bombers en route to the docks and the warehouses further down south in Tower Hamlets. An air raid shelter was built underground just inside St. Mark's Gate, but on the 15th of October 1940, a bomb made a direct hit, trapping around 100 civilians, where 15 lost their lives. Victoria Park was heavily bombed, and some parts were not restored, such as the pagoda and the bridges to the islands that used to be somewhere around here. This was because these particular monuments were in such a poor stage of repair that they had to be demolished. Just down the road from our university, Queen Mary, is Stepney Green, which was heavily affected by the bombings. Stepney Green is thought to have been the scene of the second largest V2 tragedy during the Second World War, when a rocket made a direct hit on the set of tenant blocks called the Hughes Mansions, where hundreds of people were living in individual flats. It was in the early hours when the V2 struck and killed a total of 134 people. The bomb left a massive crater, and most of the people were thought to have died instantly. Others were assumed to have died more slowly by suffocating. On Valence Road, there is a plaque that marks the site of where the bombings were. You can locate the rebuilt buildings by finding the playground by the road where the site of the mansion's original courtyard used to be. Well, that is it really. What used to be a destroyed and broken down part of London has now become into this wonderful borough in Tower Hamlets. The British people had a tough time, but through perseverance and hard work, they have come to where they are today. If there's one thing we can take away from this project, is that even in the darkest of times, there's always a glimmer of hope. Let's just hope that one of those unexploded bombs don't show up and disrupt our studies at Queen Mary. Thomas Penn was the first person on the scene of the disaster, and his very first... No! No! He walked over a mass amount of bodies to the foot of this very... What am I gonna say? Yo, Wicker? As the German bombers dropped 24,000 tons of bombs, 24,000 tons of explosives. So how many of... And it became a large... during the war. And it became... The guns there.
The guns there, keep walking. So this is what it looks like in between scenes. In between cuts when we have to get from one location to another. We have Ali.
Hi.
The MVP, the guy who tells us where to go as well.
Would it be possible to get extra credit because it's really cold?
We're getting a Jaguar!
We're on a tight budget here, guys. Why are we hiring Jaguars to pick us up?
Because we're just too classy for the regular Ubers.
Oh, there's our ride.
We're having like massive trouble trying to find a plaque. Newsflash, we were actually at the wrong place. This is the actual place.
I'm gonna kill you, John!
I'm sorry, dude. Mistakes we made. We have to film it again.
It was in the early hours. What the hell? Well, that's it really. I forgot the line.